Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to come back to the need to urgently move forward with the Canada Disability Benefit. Every day this isn't funded, 1.5 million Canadians with disabilities continue to live in legislated poverty. In my home province of Ontario, for example, the Ontario Disability Support Program is a meager $1,169. The shelter allowance is less than $500. It's not enough for a single apartment in Kitchener. Many, of course, are disappointed. This is the same bill as was tabled back in June of 2021, and so more than anything else, this is about trust. The governing party needs to demonstrate it's serious about following through on the Canada Disability Benefit, and this includes moving forward the legislation, Bill C-22, with openness to amendments that would improve it, as well as funding the benefit. And so tonight I have 5 questions for the Parliamentary Secretary from the disability, the disability community. The first is whether the governing party is going to demonstrate that C-22 is a legislative priority. We had a first day of debate on this 2 weeks ago. It's not projected to be back until we break at the end of this week. And we know that every day delayed is another day that Canadians with disabilities live in legislated poverty. Every day matters. And so I'm hoping the Parliamentary Secretary will answer when he can commit to having C-22 back for debate in this House. Secondly, we've heard from the Minister, she said that negotiations with the provinces is an issue. And so I wonder if the Parliamentary Secretary can share where the negotiations stand, what meetings have been had, and what are the sticking points. Thirdly, the Minister has also shared that another slowdown in her view is the need to sort out eligibility. Yet we know there are existing federal, provincial, and territorial programs that the Canada Disability Benefit would supplement. So the question is, why is this taking so long? Over 2 years since it was promised in the 2020 speech from the throne, when we know existing programs' eligibility lists can and should be used as a starting point. As well, the Minister continually refers to working age Canadians with disabilities, when we know 10% of Canadians over the age of 65 with a disability are living in poverty. Is the intention not to include them as well? Fourth, let's not gloss over the important need to fund the benefit. If done properly, this will be a significant investment. But as someone who has advocated often on the climate crisis in this place, I know that the federal government has recently committed $8.6 billion to oil and gas companies for a new tax credit for carbon capture and storage. And so the fact is that budgets are about priorities. And so this governing party has the opportunity to demonstrate that Canadians with disabilities are a priority. When will they then commit to a timeline for funding the Canada Disability Benefit? Is it the fall economic statement? Is it budget 2023, or is it something else? Last, the Minister has estimated this could take 12 to 18 months. Those living with a disability continue to live in poverty throughout this time. I'm hearing from Canadians with disabilities who are applying for medical assistance and dying because they feel they have no other option, that they can't afford to live. Our federal government is letting them down when we know through the pandemic that it's possible to move urgently when the moment calls for it. And so what is the federal government prepared to do to provide emergency funds in the short term? Thank you.
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Disability Inclusion.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague and friend, the MP for Kitchener Centre, for his words this evening, his sense of urgency, and also his tireless advocacy on behalf of Canadians with disabilities. As my colleague, the Honourable Minister for Workforce Development, Employment, Workforce Development and Disability Inclusion has already said, we are not playing games, Madam Speaker. We are not playing games when our fellow citizens are facing poverty. We do not play games. We take action. And that is exactly what we have been doing since forming government in 2015. Our work began with the Accessible Canada Act, which led to the creation of Accessibility Standards Canada. Recently, the Act also led to the appointment of Canada's first Chief Accessibility Officer, as well as Canada's first Accessibility Commissioner. to the Canadian Human Rights Commission. What's more, we launched the first ever National Accessibility Week in 2019. When the pandemic hit, we provided a one-time payment of up to $600 to persons with disabilities, a payment that was expanded to include the 1.75 million Canadians who receive federal disability benefits. We are also providing income support for students. We are making other investments to increase employment opportunities for persons with disabilities. Madam Speaker, allow me to mention that Budget 2022 strengthens support for an employment strategy for persons with disabilities. It accomplishes this by providing more than $270 million for its implementation through the Opportunities Fund for persons with disabilities. Of course, I would be remiss if I did not mention that we launched Canada's first poverty reduction strategy, which recognizes that for many reasons, certain groups of Canadians are more vulnerable to poverty. And right now, we are working hard to create Canada's very first Disability Inclusion Action Plan. The cornerstone of that plan is the groundbreaking Canada Disability Benefit. Bill C-22 defines an approach that would establish the Canada Disability Benefit in legislation. And I understand very much that my honourable colleague would like C-22 to move to this House quickly. And I, too, want nothing more than to see Canadians with disabilities receive the new Canada Disability Benefit as quickly as possible. And that's why, Madam Speaker, in the spirit of nothing without us, we have been working tirelessly alongside the disability community, as well as with the provinces and territories, to ensure that every person who receives the Canada Disability Benefit will be better off because of it. It's true that there is more work to do, and I agree with my colleague that time is of the essence. And as the Honourable Minister has said in this House, I encourage all of my colleagues to work together to pass Bill C-22. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to significantly reduce poverty for hundreds of thousands of working-age Canadians with disabilities. Let's not miss that opportunity, Madam Speaker. We know persons with disabilities have waited a long time for this, and that's why we are working as quickly and as efficiently as possible to deliver the historic Canada Disability Benefit. We are proud of this work. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Kitchener Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Respectfully, this is not my advocacy. In fact, it was the member for Port Moody Coquitlam who put forward a unanimous consent motion that every member in this House has called on this governing party to move more quickly on the Canada Disability Benefit. And so I'll reiterate the 5 questions I shared, hoping to get an answer to maybe at least one of them. I didn't hear an answer to any of the 5 yet. 1, when can the Parliamentary Secretary commit to C-22 being back on the floor of this House? 2, where do the negotiations stand with provincial and territorial partners? 3, why not use existing lists for existing disability support programs? 4th, when will they commit to ensuring that the benefit is funded? And 5th, what will they do in the short term to provide emergency supports for those who need it most?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. And again, we know we need to address the long-standing financial insecurity that is the lived reality of far too many working-age Canadians with disabilities. With Bill C-22, we are clearly demonstrating our commitment to lifting persons with disabilities out of poverty. And as we wait for C-22 to be passed, we are working diligently with all our partners to lay the groundwork for the next steps. We will continue building on the success of the past years, like the Accessible Canada Act and the Poverty Reduction Strategy. Madam Speaker, we are already working with our partners to iron out all the details so that C-22 can move quickly through this House. Thank you.